Alright, so the sort of final pre-production you have this week should be fairly straightforward, I think. It's basically just collecting assorted photographic reference for your object's environment and lighting inspiration, as well as sort of compiling a list of things that you need to make for your final. So for the reference, you're going to want to grab 5 or more images for environmental reference. For whatever main objects you're using for your characters, you want 2 angles for each of your main objects. If you can find orthographics, awesome. If you own the object and you want to take orthographics, even better. But you're just looking for, again, at least 2 angles of each main object. And this should be, for if you're modeling a specific type of blender, you want to grab 2 pictures of that same blender, wherever possible. Just a lot of times people sort of, I see people get like 5 pictures of 5 different blenders, and then it seems like they aren't able to like pick one to actually model, so they just sort of have like this weird blender that's sort of like missing details, and like the scale is weird. So 2 pictures of the same object, like pick an object and just go for that. Pretty much like recreating the CGI1 final, basically. But do make sure that they're consistent, or as consistent, obviously, as possible as you can get them. Lighting references, again, 5 or more images with specific stuff that you like from those. And then an item list, just a little PDF. So look up, basically, sort of break it down based on like the characters, the main human substitute objects you have. So these should all be made by you. It seems like if you're gonna get like third-party environmental background assets and such, that should be sort of background objects and not the actual main characters you're using. Partly because that's mostly what we're going to focus on, and it's going to be a lot easier to sort of use a portfolio piece when you've actually made the main objects in the scene. But 2, if you make them yourself, you get control over the topology, and that is going to make deformations a lot easier in some cases. Specifically, like triangulated models sometimes really suck to deform. But yeah, so characters, these should be made by you. You also want to grab a list of environmental objects that you need to make. And I would maybe break this down. You can organize it sort of however you want. I would like a list of stuff you're going to make yourself, and then stuff that you'll source other places. You might want to break that down further into environmental assets that are like absolutely necessary, and then like sort of stretch goal environmental objects. Again, I just want to know what you're making yourself and what you're grabbing from other places. But yeah, so it's kind of just like, I guess, to help you plan. If you're going to sit down and randomly start modeling, you don't start making some kind of like pointless object that you didn't need. But yeah, so, and then my sort of guideline is, again, you are allowed to get third-party background objects or textures or whatever for your scene. I'm sort of imposing a no more than 40% of your background stuff should be sourced from a third party. And just ideally, you would want to, have a mix of, complexity of the objects that you were using. So like, make some complex stuff yourself, download some complex stuff, download some simple stuff, right? Like, I'm sure you can find a lot of really good like pen models or something like that to download. That just like saves you a little bit of time. You get a nice, pre-textured pen, that kind of thing. And that might free you up to make something a little bit more specific for your scene. And then again, not again, it's the first time I'm mentioning it. Anyway, I'm going crazy. Sorry. So Sims or any other stuff that you were considering using, and backup plans if that doesn't work. So this is optional. It's mainly looking at if your scene is heavily reliant on fire or smoke or clouds or like some weird effect that you maybe haven't tried before, end cloth, whatever. Write that down, because I want to know, partly because I'll sort of use that to tailor future lectures, but write that down and figure out a backup plan that you might be able to make that work with. If that's, using card fire instead of simulated fire, blend shapes instead of end cloth. Make sure that you figure that out early, because I've had students in the past where they sort of didn't. Oh, they overscoped a lot, and then they didn't figure out backup plans for a lot of this stuff. So then their projects ended up being late because they were sort of struggle busing with Sims for a week and a half, where they should have been animating, and it was like a whole thing. So it might also be good to sort of, if you don't write it down, to sort of think of deadlines. Like, if I can't get Sims working by week 7, I'm gonna stop and I'm gonna do this other thing instead. Really, no suggestions or notes, fairly straightforward. So you get half credit for turning in all your reference, and you get half credit for doing the checklist. That's pretty much this. This one, I would actually like everything just thrown in a PDF. I'm sorry, not a PDF. What am I saying? And I actually need to add a thing to this. Cough, cough, cough. I thought I updated this. Apparently I was mistaken. Insert row below. And we're going to go with PDF list of objects, not in zip. Okay. Cool. So, you have 2 things to submit. One is a zip file with all of your required images in them. If you could, just keep everything in one single folder, and just label the items, so you have like environment 1, environment 2, celery 1, celery 2, whatever. So like their naming should sort them, and I would just everything in one giant folder. And then a PDF list of your objects. Please include that separately and not in the zip folder. So you should be uploading 2 files, one zip folder and one just random PDF. That is pretty much the assignment. Kind of petty, but I will duck small amounts of points for separating things with folders. And if you give me a big disorganized sequence of just random string number images, I will also take points off for that. So yeah, that's pretty much this. Hopefully that makes sense. Yeah.